What a wild game that was. The close game with Rutgers that nobody saw coming after, what was a strong 6 quarters of football. And really, if you extend it back past that, 10 quarters of football for the Nittany Lions. And they go to the wire with Rutgers. The defense lets the team down from what would have been a blowout if they had played some competent defense today. We can get into that and what was going on. I think Jake Butt, while not maybe the best analyst in college football, he tells you what's going on in the game. And I think he did a great job of explaining what Rutgers was doing. We can get into that a little more in depth here on the show, discuss the players and the places where it really hurt Penn State. We learned some stuff here even at the end about Penn State's defense and playing some competent teams. We tried to tell you on the tailgate show, and I was wrong because, I did not think Rutgers' offensive line would hold up against Penn State's defensive line and their defensive structure and the new attacking style of play that they had found over the last couple of weeks. Clearly, they were good enough for the moment, and they were able to help Rutgers play a balanced game of football, which led to over 500 yards in this game. How many did they get? 533 by the end, 388 yards passing, nearly 190 yards by Antoine Raymond in the game. And of course, we'll get to the Fire Jim Knowles conversation throughout the show because, of course, we can't. We're gonna get to it. Obviously, we'll discuss why things went the way they did. But this is the Labatt Postgame Show. You are my co-host. I'm T. Frank. Thomas Frank Carr is my name, but you can call me T. Frank here if you're new for the first time. It's the holiday season. We're here at the very end of First 6 and 16. I'm sure it's the diehards, right, that haven't switched over and gone to do something else with their time. Let's start with the opening thoughts. That final play call was awesome. That is what I wanted them to do. That was the play design I wanted them to use during the 4-minute offense against Indiana, where just throw a play action. Don't do a read option. Don't do an RPO. Don't try to be getting the safest, rightest play call. Take a chance. And on 4th and 2, instead of putting the ball in Katron Allen's hands in a predictable way, they give it to Andrew Rappelier, who has been just really good. And that was the unexpected thing they needed in that moment to then go and win the football game. Because if they had run it up the gut again, I don't think they would have gotten it. Of course, I'm going to break all that down and see all that tomorrow on our film study, where we're going to be studying all the way down to the final play again. So many plays in this game. How many plays were there? Only 54 plays for Penn State. That second half was really controlled by Rutgers. But a defensive play from heaven. Like the football gods, cosmic interference, fate, whatever it's supposed to be. A curse for Rutgers fans. I don't know what it was. But Ethan Kaliak-Manis has done that a million times in his life, where he has just opened his hand to throw the football and it popped out. Like, I don't necessarily know if I believe in fate, but it's hard not to when you see something like that. And the game ends on a defensive play of the game. And truly, like, it ended on Katron Allen's 47-yard run against cover 0, where there's no safety and he burrows through the offensive line. We can get into some of the halftime adjustments and all those things throughout the show. And, of course, your questions here on the BWI Live Postgame Show. Stephen Light says, we are the luckiest SOBs today. Yes, there is some luck there. There's definitely some luck. But I also give credit to the Penn State offense, for putting together that final drive. Even if, the 4th down stop, there was some providence in there, but Penn State also came up with clutch plays too. It wasn't just that they got lucky. They made some clutch plays when there was another opportunity for Rutgers to score, and they go down to that 4th down situation, and then Zion Tracy, who struggled stopping the run all game long as the nickel defender trying to add into the box late, he finally gets that stop because Ethan Kaliak-Manis keeps the ball, and they didn't bite all day on that fake, right? So all day they've been hammered, 195 yards rushing or whatever it is, minus the scrambles and sacks and stuff like that. 200 yards rushing, let's just say, in this game. Easily 200 yards rushing in this game. And Zion Tracy stays disciplined in that moment to make that play. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of luck, and there's a little bit of clutch gene from this team with Terry Smith as the head coach, even on possibly one of their worst days outside of the UCLA game. It was feeling very UCLA 2025, and then there were some elements, and I'll explain in a little bit what I mean by the game against Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. There were some shades of that in terms of the way this coverage was playing out. Ted says the defense didn't play well at all, all night, and then so nice to hear what he really thinks. Don't think it's enough. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, Ted. I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know. There's not enough context here. Sorry about that, everybody. Ted coming in with a donation. So how this always works for people who are new here is if you donate to the channel, I'll get to that because I can come up to this little special segment and I can read what you have to say while I'm talking so that I don't have to have dead air, which makes the alarm in my brain go off. But Ted, maybe some extra context in what you're talking about here if you're going to donate to the channel and you're going to engage super chat protocol. Appreciate that. This is, of course, the Labatt Postgame Show. Want to remind you that this fall and heading now into the holiday season, you can have eggnog. That's fine. But don't forget, college football and just winter, nothing goes better with cold weather than an ice-cold Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light, because when you bleed blue and white, you drink blue and light. This is where it's really important for me, as from Almost Canada, a Buffalo Bills fan. This is the beer you drink in Buffalo snow games. Brewed in the USA, born in Canada, brewed in the USA, Labatt has been a game day tradition for fans who know how to celebrate each first down and every touchdown. And every time that it snows, we're supposed to get a big snowstorm here in Pennsylvania, go get some Labatt, batten down the hatches. And here's the best part. When you stock up on Labatt, you can score big off the field too. Just visit rewards.labattusa.com to get rewarded with a buy beer, get gear program. So whether you're tailgating with 107,000 fans or just watching with 409 friends on the postgame show, crack a Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light and make every Saturday a win. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Okay. So, RPO football. You guys ready for this? Rutgers likes to throw RPOs. This is the same conversation we had about Indiana, but Indiana did not have success running the football for the most part against Penn State in a way that allowed them to throw the RPO. Penn State was able to take away the RPO passing and force them into some complex third down situations and frustrate a passing attack that didn't have its number one receiver, Elijah Surratt. But if you go back to the game against UCLA, we're in a similar situation. Penn State and their defensive line still aren't great at stopping the run. Dennis Sutton had a rough game against that defensive line. Chaz Coleman had a rough game, and then I think he got pulled because he was just not functionally capable of playing against a Rutgers offensive line, which we told you on the tailgate show. They're physical, they'll maul you, maybe not the most athletic players in the world, and they didn't need that half of that. They didn't need the most athletic players in the world because of a couple of things. Penn State was not able to stop the run and force them into third and long situations, as you saw. And formationally and by scheme, Rutgers is going to be in 3 receiver personnel the whole game. So Penn State can't play an extra linebacker. They can't add an extra player into the box. They have to have Zion Tracy out there against DT Sheffield, who is a good receiver. So there's a couple of things that we said before the game that could play into Rutgers being able to throw the football, but I did not think that they would be able to run the ball and throw effectively in the same game plan. I figured Penn State would be able to take one of those things away. They were not able to. So they were able to run the ball effectively against a 6-man box. Jake Butt talked about that the whole game. But the point is, Zion Tracy had to play really good run defense. And 2 things happened in the game. The defensive ends, and like I mentioned, specifically those 2 guys on the edge, did not hold contain. They were not able to hold their point of attack. And the defensive line in general, linebackers, what I'm trying to say is Rutgers' offensive line dominated Penn State's one-on-one situations up front, forced by the formation in the RPO. Because you notice when Penn State did not get run stops or they did not get pressure, they started to blitz. Ethan Kaliak-Manis is a good quarterback in the same way that you saw from the Notre Dame quarterback in the Orange Bowl. If you give him one-on-ones, You give him the ability to read an easy, clean coverage design of it's just man coverage or it's like an off zone where it turns into man when you run enough guys into the route. He can pick his favorite matchup. He can pick the leverage he wants, and he can throw the ball quickly and in rhythm. Talking to the Rutgers guys on the podcast that I did with them earlier this week was super helpful, by the way. Smart guys. They pointed that out of when he's in rhythm. And the thing that you notice from Kaliakmanis and his receivers is they're good vertical receivers. They're good down the field. Big guys on the outside, and then a good shifty slot receiver. So in those one-on-one situations, they're going to have the opportunity to make plays on Penn State's DBs. It was incumbent on them, once Penn State had to play man coverage, and it came out in the first drive, where Rutgers was able to go bang, bang, bang against Penn State's coverage, that if you give them one-on-one, it's going to be a long day. Because just right off the bat, and these are rough because I'm trying to do my own play-by-play, but 15-yard play action, 15 yards against cover one slant, and then 15-yard deep crosser versus man coverage. No pressure on any of those. That was 45 yards in 3 plays, roughly. And that's what happened for the rest of the game is Penn State had to play structurally to keep an extra player in coverage. But when they blitzed, they gave one-on-one situations to a quarterback who's really good at getting to his first read and throwing the ball in rhythm, and Penn State could not get him off his rhythm. And then they gave up some wild plays. Davian Collins on that one-handed catch by the outside receiver, the 6'6" guy, was, first off, insane catch. Like, it was not a great throw, but Davian Collins jumped about 3 minutes early on that play. Like, the contested catch situation, again, going into the strengths and weaknesses of these matchups, and this is why Nebraska, not a strong offensive line, and good enough receivers, but maybe don't have a schematic advantage against Penn State, they couldn't challenge Penn State's defensive backs the same way. Also a young quarterback, against a fifth-year senior Nathan Kaliakmanis. So called on spicy Rutgers all year for a reason. Like, if they had any semblance of a defense, this would be a good team. And they were able to challenge Penn State's weaknesses by spreading the field to run and then timing when Penn State was going to blitz, which they did a great job of timing that. Kirk Shiraka did a good job in this game. I think he's done a great job at Rutgers of creating threats, right? So why could other teams shut down Rutgers, but Penn State couldn't? Like, why could Ohio State? Because they can afford to play less players in the box and dominate because they got bigger, stronger defensive tackles. They have a better defensive line from a run defense perspective overall. So Penn State and Rutgers, the way these offenses matched up, Penn State wasn't able to generate tackles for loss. They weren't able to generate bodies in the box to attack. And if they had tried playing a third linebacker, I'm sure somebody wants to see a 4-3 out there. Unless you have literally Fred Warner, a guy who used to play that position, play the nickel as a linebacker, and play in space and then play the run, who is also the best linebacker in football, unless you have a guy like that, you don't have an opportunity to play a third linebacker in this game. They're not athletic enough to play in coverage because then you've got a linebacker on a receiver in coverage, and you're going to look like an idiot that way. So there are certain things that if you can't take away the run with a light box, then you're not going to be able to fully stop the Rutgers offense. And that's, kind of what it was for the game. So, not to start with the negative stuff, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are still like smarting about giving up 500 yards to Rutgers. Ryan says, Christmas is looking good, T. Frank. Looking forward to the head coach announcement. Hopefully it's worth the wait. And of course, we've chosen factions now, right? So he's in hashtag not Terry Smith. And then we got the Terry Smith people, and I was talking to them the pregame, and they want to say, give him a 2-year contract. And I tried to explain why that's a bad idea, and they're like, but I want it. And here we are. So obviously we're going to have to talk about that at some point, I guess. We got this from hashtag handle. Something happened on YouTube where everyone's names got reset, so now it's just a string of letters. And I hope you're not a bot, but you seem to have a point here. Penn State needs to get bigger, stronger, faster, and meaner. Too small and too slow. They're not too slow. I will say they are not too slow. But in this season, I would say bigger and stronger. They are faster, and I don't think they're nice. I don't think they're a nice group of people. They played with pretty good tenacity in some of these other games. But yes, I would say that they are not. That is a problem. right? So with this style of defense, without the attacking nature of it, and Penn State didn't want to play a bunch of, press cover one in this game where they shouldn't have wanted to. Let's go to some of your other questions. We can get to some of the others. Well, okay, let's round this out by putting up what is maybe the second most, because it's a win, the second most ridiculous segment we've had to do all year, which is the defensive player of the game. The defensive player of the game is brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClanahan, who thought Penn State was going to get a blowout win, but he did predict a lot of points in the game, by the way. And he is a super fan of Penn State football. That's what you need to know about him. We text quite a bit about Penn State football and his predictions for the game. He fancies himself a sharp, and he says to me that he's one of the few people that actually makes money betting on football. So, I don't know if you're going for betting advice. Also, please gamble responsibly, et cetera, et cetera. He does a great job of giving me his thoughts pregame. But if you need to talk to him about his actual profession, he's very accessible, and you can reach him nights and weekends. Hopefully, you'll never need him. Probably, you'll never need him. But if you need a name in the moment when you are facing criminal charges for whatever, most people won't, but if you do, you want to know a name. He has over 24 years of experience, and he'll most of you never going to need him, but if you do, mattmlaw.com. Matt McClanahan of Matt M. Law. So our defensive player of the game is Amari Campbell, not just for the fumble from God, not just from the divine touchdown that put Penn State up 40-36, but also because he had 14 tackles in this game. He had half a sack and 5 solo tackles. There's some cleaning up to do because obviously there's some busted run fits this week. I know the one that I thought was on him. Turned out it was Alonzo Ford losing his gap and then Amari Campbell overcompensating for that. So there's some cleaning up to do. I don't think anyone had a clean game or anyone was the standout star. But Amari Campbell, once again, the heart of the Penn State defense, racking up 14 tackles, but a lot of those were down the field. 3 pass breakups in the game. I'm sorry. We have to stop here for a second. I'm going to give the honorable mention. He just didn't play enough, I think. He was not involved in enough plays, but Darius Dixon was lights out great in this game. And I can't believe I almost forgot about that. It's in my postgame notes. I haven't got a chance to even open them up yet because we've been rattling off all the things about the defense. Darius Dixon was phenomenal. Thrown at twice, 2 pass breakups. That is a 0% completion percentage into his coverage. That's like a 39 passer rating or something like that. He's looking really impressive. There's a lot of really good young defensive talent. Xavier Gilliam had a good start to the game. I don't think he necessarily finished well, though. There was one drive in the first half, though, that he just absolutely ended the drive. He stonewalled the offensive lineman, pushed, I think it was the center, into the backfield, made the running back cut in the backfield, and then on the very next play, after Penn State took a timeout to stop a offsides or something or other, then he got half a sack, and which led to the punt. So he had some flash in this game. Young defensive talent on Penn State's side of the ball. We'll have to see if they can keep it in-house, which we are now officially into the everyone's got to keep their head on a swivel for what's going on at BWIillustrated.com with the transfer portal. Names might go into the portal. Doesn't mean they're all going to go, but a good number of them probably will. And if you want to follow along with that, now's the time to sign up because as much as the regular season, we got the intel for you. I've got my breakdowns of film, etc. Here's the thing you need to know. We're going to have a lot of intel for you at BWIillustrated.com for the transfer portal and, of course, for the coaching search because it's coming down to it. They're going to name a coach pretty soon. Everyone's guessing who the big name is. Everyone's guessing who the mystery man is. And from what I can tell, everyone doesn't know. But we've got some good leads over at the site to keep you informed. And here's the other thing. Not going to BS you and just tell you a name, right? Here's the next name to throw out there. I think Nate does a great job of being responsible with it. And if you want responsible journalism, please check out the site. It's my stump speech for them for doing a great job. I'm just over here watching the film. That's going to be what I do tomorrow. I'm going to be watching the film and I don't know, like having I don't smoke, but I'm probably going to need a smoke break in the middle of this defensive film. So Penn State's offense was pretty awesome in this game. So let's now shift and talk about that a little bit. And of course, we'll get to whatever you want to talk to here in the chat as well once we get through some of these thoughts. Let me just double around back here. Here's another thing that happened in the second half is that Rutgers played better on defense. So let's start with what happened in the first half. Penn State attacked the edges of the Rutgers defense. So they were able to get some pristine running plays. Like, I mean this, perfectly technically blocked plays. Nick Singleton's explosive run in the first half where he got like 40-some yards. It was just a simple outside zone. And Penn State kicked ass. The left side of their line got every single block, and Penn State was able to reach the center and get their offensive line over to the left. And then Nick Singleton, who's genuinely having a really good second half of his season, made some great cuts, great vision. He was able to set up his blocks and run, both on kick returns and in the run game. So he was great in this game, like genuinely improving his draft stock, because people want to see it with Nick. They want to see it because he's going to run in the 4.3s at 220-plus pounds, and he needs to have some of that vision and anticipation on film because he is the prototype of the one-cut runner. He is a guy who can plant his foot and explode upfield, and he did that today. Katron Allen, filthy cuts, just absolutely exceptional running, and that's really what it was. Is Penn State's running backs got them this win today. I was a little concerned for Penn State fans going into the second half of this game when it started turning into a shootout, that if you had to have Ethan Grunkmeyer carry the offense against a senior who we just explained the situation was set up well for him and his skill set, it was not going to go well. And then Katron Allen rips off some long runs in the second half. He finishes with, my word, 226 yards and averaged 10 yards per rush. Nick Singleton averaged 9.6 yards per carry in this game. That's crazy. 300 yards rushing in this game is a bananas number. And in the second half, things got a little bit murky in the third quarter. So let me explain the frustration. I think they had a 3-and-out in the third quarter. Let me double check here. They didn't have a 3-and-out, but they had a couple of stagnated drives where they had to kick a field goal. And then they had another field goal drive where they weren't able to execute, right, and get a touchdown. So in a lot of these plays that Penn State's running, toss sweeps, pin and pulls, crack blocks, etc., trying to get to the outside, they're attacking Rutgers' safeties and their corners. So the Rutgers safeties and corners were literally pinballing off each other in run defense. They didn't know who was supposed to be setting outside contain. They didn't know who was supposed to be attacking and filling the alley in run defense. And so they were getting blocked by Kobe Howard and Trevor Pena. Like, you will get 2 blocks for the price of 1 receiver. And when you do that and you get to the outside and your corners are now in the deer in the headlights and the Mack truck of Katron Allen is coming, it's an advantage for Penn State. And they fully exploited that in the second half. 2 things happened, and I said this earlier. I gave it away because I was reading my notes and I just blurted it out. Rutgers started playing better. Their corners and safeties got their heads on straight, and they started playing with more conviction and confidence and factual accuracy of where they're supposed to be in the run game. So Penn State wasn't able to rip off these big runs. They weren't able to get out into open space and then create the one-on-one matchup they want with a guy out of position. They whatever they did at halftime to simplify that and simplify the communication of guys filling from the safety position and the corners, they got that taken care of. The other thing that they did is, I'm not saying that they specifically picked on Nick Dawkins, but they picked on Nick Dawkins a little bit. So Penn State's running these pulling concepts and these outside zones, and they're trying to get an extra lineman on the one side of the offensive line. So what Rutgers did is they just planted a guy in his way. It's called shading the center. So you start with it. So you start with an angle at the offensive lineman, and then you just run directly into him, as you can see. Like, if you're watching me pantomime and you're not listening on the podcast, that's a great way to stymie Penn State's run concepts, is to just plant a guy where you think they're going to run and then have him push the center upfield. And so you weren't getting all that easy access into the front of the run, to the front side of the run. For some cutbacks, Nick Singleton didn't get into space as easily. And then you found yourself with 4-yard runs instead of 27-yard runs, and it becomes much harder. Now, later in the game, obviously, Penn State was able to rip off some good runs. They were able to get a touchdown in the third quarter, which I can't bring up that play out of my mind. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was the defensive touchdown, I think. So, there's a little bit of adjustment by Rutgers in the second half. Were they able to stymie what Penn State was trying to do enough for their offense to then, where they're trying to give their offense the opportunity to retake the lead, which they did. And so that's really, to me, that's the story of the game, is Penn State's offense didn't have as many opportunities in the second half. So that was kind of the end of the game for the analysis on that side, because then you see, there's not much analysis about a cover 0 run, right? Where they're just going to stick their head into the line of scrimmage and come out the other side because it's a massive chaos. Now, this one, so this is from Matthew Bunk, and I'm going to get to the what made me laugh and kind of get distracted here in a second. But Matthew wants to know, T. Frank, could you see a scenario that Penn State goes to the Pinstripe Bowl and faces the University of Pittsburgh? Yeah, I think that's the probable scenario, what everyone is telling me about. So, the answer to that question. The question is, will Penn State go to that bowl game? And so let's talk about the will Penn State go to that bowl game. Penn State isn't going to just go to the bowl game because it has the opportunity to go to the bowl game. The point of the bowl game is to keep playing football and keep your team together. So that very much rests on Terry Smith's shoulders in a certain sense. And to a lesser degree, the coaching staff in general. So let's talk about what's going to happen in the next couple of days, if it hasn't happened already. Penn State staff is going to be coming to the end of the season, right? And a lot of them are going to get overtures from James Franklin to go to Virginia Tech. That's off-field staff. That is the coaching staff. The coaches that he wants to bring with him, he is going to try and bring them to Virginia Tech. The question is going to be, is Terry Smith one of them? Because if he's not in consideration for the head coaching job at that point, like in December 27th, 29th, whatever it is, the end of the month, if he decides that he's not the head coach, so he's going to go to Virginia Tech or whatever job he might be offered, because he's a very good position coach, he's a very good recruiter, and he's a strength of the Penn State program, right? And so to take that, somebody's going to want that. James Franklin is absolutely going to want that, but there's going to be a lot of people interested in his services. I don't know, maybe even a head coaching job at a lower level program. I don't know, right? So he's going to be a desirable person to go somewhere and coach other than Penn State. And he has to decide, do I want to coach one more game as the head coach of the Pennsylvania State University? Because it's very important to him. And he's been talking this whole time about going to the bowl game. And so from that point down, could he convince the other coaches to stay for said game? And could they resist the pressure to go to other jobs now that this thing is all getting blown up? And in the intermediate time, does Penn State name a head coach? And do they start to reform the roster, right? Start to, as everything is leaking out of the program, are they able to then put some walls up around it, and now you have some structure of this is going to be the head coach. This is going to be how it goes at Penn State. So here are some players that want to stay and play there. Then you might have a chance. Those are the factors that go into, is Penn State going to play in a bowl game? Because what you don't want to do is go to a bowl game and not have enough coaches to coach the players, let alone do you have enough of those players to play in the game? Because if the coaches all leave, then what would incentivize the players for playing? Wouldn't they then say, okay, well, I'll just go to the portal as well? So there are some important dominoes that have to fall for Penn State to want to go to the bowl game. And this is why pregame, when we were talking about this, and why I don't blame fans for deciding ahead of time, that's too many ifs. There's too many opportunities for somebody to just leave and go and do something else for a meaningless bowl game. So it'll be incumbent on the people that can make the decisions to stay, and convince everyone else that it's worth staying for. And that's a lot of selflessness. Let's be honest about it. That's a lot of selfless factors. At least that's how I see it. So I do find this one funny. I don't know if this is sarcastic or not. But my sources are telling me there's mutual interest between Deion Sanders and Penn State. There are concerns about his health, but expect an announcement to be made sooner rather than later. Everyone has been saying, like, I talked to somebody earlier today. They're like, it's this coach, and it's like, expect this to be named sooner rather than later. No, this is not what's happening. Like, I don't know if Henrik here is like trolling everybody and this is a joke, or if he's like trying to get famous on YouTube. But like, no, this is not going to happen. But I did find that super hilarious and worth putting on the screen for everybody. Deion Sanders going to Penn State. I mean, I could be wrong. Like, again, like Terry Smith said, we live in an infinite possibility and an infinite world of ifs. And, you know, we live in the multiverse, and there are the future is unwritten at this point. And Penn State is in a position where they are trying to hire a coach that is better than James Franklin. That's not shade at James Franklin. That is the fact of they fired him to find somebody better than James Franklin and to make a splash. Like that has been said multiple times. They're trying to make a splash. Deion Sanders would be as much splash as possible. The question is there enough substance as possible behind that? So that's the way I can get you to the path of, yeah, it's Deion Sanders because Pat Kraft got desperate and felt like he got backed into a corner. I don't know how to handle this point, but I guess we're just transitioning for a minute into the head coach conversation, which we can do that. Let me see. Playing a lot of man coverage, did that. One-on-one matchups, Penn State blitzing. Yep, not dominating the line of scrimmage. Trying to add players in after the snap. Okay, yeah, so Penn State, part of what they were trying to do in the game, before we move on fully to this conversation, I just want to say, like, Jim Knowles' defense, what they were trying to do against the run, because everyone's going to hate it, right? Everyone's going to hate the result. What they were trying to do is deny the RPO passing and then funnel the ball where they want it to go. And I know you've heard this before, but have them run the ball. And then Zion Tracy, this is why I wanted to talk about this. Zion Tracy was incredibly important in this game because they had to funnel the ball to the run game away from the RPO. And he had to play between two worlds. He had to wait, and all these players, Amari Campbell, Dom DeLuca, they all had to wait in space and then attack. And so that was the problem, is Penn State's defensive line couldn't make the running back hesitate because they were getting pushed off the line of scrimmage, or they were playing out of structure and trying to play hero ball. And suddenly Zion Tracy is in 5 yards of space with a bad angle to the tackle box, and he missed a lot of tackles in this game. Missed tackles in general were a problem, but those missed tackles in those situations and then missed tackles on secondary plays was another huge part of that. Another thing, so now we're going into this now, so I want to get to this before we get to the coaching search announcement. And that is the Prowler package on third down. Another thing that came up, a blast from the past, and Rutgers has done a good bit of homework on this situation. They had a good game plan. Kirk Shiraka and Greg Schiano obviously have a lot of history with Penn State, so they had a good game plan. Penn State has been putting in the Prowler package on third down, which means that they've got 3 defensive linemen and then a wild card player who was, in this situation, Keon Wiley, right? He's going to be the QB spy / blitzer. You're going to mug the A-gaps with your linebackers and make it look like could be a 5-man pass rush, could be, Abdul Carter would get one-on-ones against running backs in that situation and just absolutely dominate. And they were trying to get that. But what Rutgers was doing was going tempo on third down from, on third down from second down, they don't get it. Then they go tempo on third and medium or long so that Penn State could not get its Prowler package on and get a call because it's a substitution. Teams did that against Manny Diaz in 2023. And so they brought that back where Penn State has to get the personnel on the field and get the call in. And they could just get the personnel on the field and they couldn't get the call in to have themselves set up. And you saw Penn State get caught on a third and long where they gave up an easy first down. That's why. Because Rutgers was attacking the personnel exchange, not just going fast to get an easy call. They were doing it to prevent Penn State from getting what they wanted on the field, but waiting until Penn State was trying to do it. So that was a great way to eliminate even the bad situations in which they were in. So Jim Knowles did not end on a high note. But also I think Rutgers was a team set up to challenge them in this particular situation. Now, okay, so first, Emir says, hello from Bangkok. Good win. Yeah. What time is it there for you? Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. Pat, it's just Jimmy, who seems to have fixed his YouTube handle, says, if Pat Kraft doesn't announce a head coach by the end of the week, he has failed us, meaning Penn State fans. I disagree. He has failed Penn State if he doesn't get the best head coach he can possibly get to join the program. It's the timing of it. This is all a roulette, because Penn State is going after very talented coaches, and maybe Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss, right? And goes somewhere else before his team can make the playoff, or he announces he's leaving and then tries to coach through. I don't even know how that would work. I don't want to imagine the scenario at all. But Penn State is going to have to hire a coach before the end of the college football playoff. But how long are they willing to wait, and how much is Pat Kraft willing to gamble? Because if you go through championship weekend and one of those coaches is on your radar and they lose their championship game and get knocked out of the playoff, now you've got a head coach candidate who you can seriously consider, and you can have a deal, announce, etc. That's the gamble. And the question is, do you want to gamble? Do you, the Penn State fan, want to gamble to get a genuinely great head coach, or do you want to go the route where Penn State settles and they don't get their first, one of their top options? Because the first options are all off the table for the most part. And then it becomes, do you wait until the first round of the playoff? And that's another question of, are they going to do that? That's December 19th. So you are now into the end of December. That it feels like that's too long, because you're a week and a half away. What is that? 2 weeks away? I think it's the 19th, or the yeah. Hold on, I got the wrong month up because I had this already because of holidays, right? So yeah, the playoff starts the 18th, 19th, I want to say. And so you have a week after that before the transfer portal opens. That's too late. You can't have a coach come off a first round loss and then go into that game and expect something to happen. So when do you expect an announcement? By the latest, December 11th, 12th, which would go past Timmy's deadline of this weekend, right? The end of this weekend, meaning the end of Sunday. And that's you're asking for a coach that didn't make the postseason. But Penn State fans want a coach that can win some big games. But obviously they can't get a coach that wins all the big games, because then they're going to win a championship. So there is a needle that they can still thread here, and it comes down to who loses the championship games and who's still interested in Penn State. And that is a very short list. And the gamble is then they are left holding the bag, maybe? Like they're the last person with no seat to sit in musical chairs. And then it becomes like, do you hire Terry Smith? Is Terry Smith so insulted that he doesn't want the job? I think he would still take the job at that point. But then you are in the made a mistake. Made a mistake, overestimated what we thought the program would be to these coaches. So those are the things I see here. They're aiming high, make it a big swing, and they can still hit the ball. You know, like Penn State fans, because the season is over, think that this is over. It's just beginning. It's just beginning. They have done the due diligence on all the candidates to get them in a situation where they can make the offers to the people they want. And again, I'm going to tell you, go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, because Nate knows way more about this than I do. But this is what I've been saying this whole time, is like championship weekend, to me, after that game, now it's like you've reached the end of the tarmac, the runway. You've reached the end of the runway. Like the plane has to take off at that point. Yes, it's after the early signing period, but you don't want to fill up your roster at the sake of getting the head coach wrong, because Penn State fans that don't like James Franklin, the head coach sets the tone for the team. And if you don't get the right head coach, you don't get the right tone. And you don't get the right decision-making. You don't get the right philosophical approach to football. You don't get the right CEO to manage NIL. You don't get a guy that has a good view of like who the GM should be. You miss on all these other aspects of the position and the building structure, which is so much tied to the head coach, that you're sacrificing that, which we've said is the most important thing. And again, James Franklin was not a terrible coach. He wasn't the worst coach in the history of coaches. He was winning 10 games a year until this year, where he didn't get the chance to try and win 10 games, which he wasn't going to, right? So that becomes now like, do you get a guy that is just going to win you 10 games? Did you say, hey, we're among the big boys, and then you find out you're not? It should be a wake-up call to Penn State fans. You can blame Pat Kraft, and that's fine. But Pat Kraft is representing the allocation and the resources that he has. And some of you are going to say, like, Penn State has enough resources. I don't want to hear about it because they have more resources than you and me. That's fine. That's fair. But again, it's like comparing NFL salaries or college football salaries to you or my salaries. It's not the same playing field. It's not the same reality. We don't live in that reality. I'm not 6'5", and I can't run a 4.5 at the same time. Like, I don't have the skills that are valuable that we have all decided because we love football that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we don't get to decide how much is enough money in this situation. So we don't get to decide how much is enough money for Penn State to operate, for these coaches to operate. And it does come down to money. And I know everyone hates that, and it feels sick and gross inside. But that should be what you hear from this. It's not that Pat Kraft failed. And it is that he failed. He failed to sell the situation to somebody that they can make it work. But the situation is what it is. If this were Ohio State, if this were resource-rich Oregon, this wouldn't be the conversation. It would just be like, did they get the guy they wanted or not? Did he decide to stay, right? Even Alabama tried to come for Dan Lanning, I think, at one point, right? And Oregon committed the resources to Dan Lanning for him to stay. So is Penn State able to go out and pluck a coach that can get you there? And I don't know that we know. I don't know that we know if Penn State's going to be able to pull that off. So I don't know. We'll see. I want to get your thoughts here again on the show. Yeah, Josh Gray. Hey, T. Frank, any thought on A.J. Harris's performance today? Here's the problem. So first off, I don't think it was good enough because his standard of All-American, the standard of I want to be a first-round draft pick, all those things, didn't play to that all year necessarily consistently. And in the biggest games, he was picked on in one-on-one coverage and had a penalty and had a snap early. And then Darius Dixon made a lot of plays in a similar situation. So I do want to first off say that corner is hard because you're like the offensive line. We only really notice the bad plays if they're not throwing at you. And you only get thrown at, even for a terrible day, let's say you have the worst day in the world, and it's 5 for 5. That's only 5 of 65 plays. It's 5 of how many passes in this game. Now, it's 100% of what was thrown at you, and you didn't do your job in those plays, but it's 5 of 22. Like, actually, that's a pretty high percentage. But let's say it's 35 passes, right? So I want to hold off and say he had a terrible day. It was not the same day that David Collins had in the situation where the assessment of that, but it was also not good enough. And I don't know what plays they made off screen that prevented some of the other plays, because there were some coverage sacks and coverage throwaways where Penn State clamped down on those receivers and forced a bad play. But in this situation, hard to say he had a good day. I still want to say it was his worst performance of the year because he might have gotten benched. So it's close. We're in that territory because I don't remember seeing him at the end of the game. Darius Dixon was out there. I know Darius Dixon was out there on the final drive, but I don't have all the facts right now. So he may have gotten benched in that fourth quarter, and I don't know. And I don't want to say I've already said it, but I don't want to say like he definitely did because I don't want to be super wrong. But yeah, not a great day. And generally, from this, this is a good, this is a better general point to make about the corners in this game. And I'm including Zion Tracy, got toasted by DT Sheffield for a touchdown, and for the outside corners. I don't remember seeing Elliott Washington today. So I got to go check out that if he played. But Davian Collins and A.J. Harris, Zion Tracy. We were told in the preseason this would be the strength of the team, strength of the defense, that this was a championship caliber secondary. And that really the team was built around the concept of coverage, of those guys being suffocating, right? And in the biggest games where they were challenged, Indiana didn't come through. And not just on that final play, right? Like the plays to set up the plays you remember. A lot of contested catches didn't go their way. A lot of getting beat in single coverage. Ohio State obviously was one of those games where they didn't work for them. And then in other games and other situations where they weren't able to just be better than the other team and give Penn State an easy out. A UCLA situation where they weren't able to clamp down, even though they played better in the second half of that game. Like they gave up some quick passes in that game. And then again, like the Northwestern game specifically, they give up a touchdown in a game where you lose by a point because A.J. Harris stumbled on the play, basically just had bad technique. And in this game where they're challenged by a team with a decent quarterback, like again, Ethan Kaliakmanis is a decent quarterback, decent college quarterback. I don't know that he's going to be able to read the field well enough to be an NFL player, but like he's going to get a cup of coffee. Like somebody's going to bring him in as a practice squad arm to see what's there. But in the college, in this system, this was a good quarterback that challenged this defense, and the corners didn't hold up. And we were told that, and by the way, I said this, that they should be the strength of the team based on their performance historically. A.J. Harris was really good last year. A.J. Harris was okay this year. And that's not what was expected of them. So yeah, in another game where they were challenged, I didn't know that they really stepped up to the plate and delivered for Penn State to just give Penn State one thing they could take away. Because that's where they were. And again, to rehash kind of the story of the game for the Penn State defense, the defensive line couldn't give Penn State the ability to take away the passing game and to not play man coverage. So they had to blitz for both pressure and to stop the run, which put Penn State in one-on-one situations. One-on-one coverage. King Mack struggled, gave up a touchdown. Zion Tracy gave up a touchdown. Davian Collins, A.J. Harris. Again, the only guy that didn't give up a reception today, I believe, in one-on-one coverage was Darius Dixon, the freshman. So they couldn't just clamp down on the receivers and take that away. And I say just like it's easy. It's not easy. But I'm saying simply take that off the table, and then Penn State can load the box, stop the run, throw 7 players at the box every play. And so Penn State did not have a thing they could lean on. They couldn't lean on the secondary. They had to play man coverage or play some sort of soft zone where Rutgers was able to get their receivers out into coverage, and they couldn't stop the run with fewer numbers. So they were caught in the worst of both worlds, which is how you get 533 yards. So yeah, generally, overall, not good enough for Penn State secondary this year, which was the story of the season. Flat out, like, things we thought about this team weren't true. Pass rush couldn't cover up for the fact that these, and to be fair, to be brutally, like, flat out fair, what we're saying is Davian Collins, A.J. Harris, and Zion Tracy are all top 50 NFL draft picks. That's like where we're talking about where they weren't good enough this year to just erase the Ohio State passing game and to stop this particular game in pure one-on-one coverage where they give up nothing. That's really hard. But also it felt like it was not as much of a fight as you were expecting. And so those guys have to live with the results of this year for their draft stock, for their portal opportunities, for their desire to remain at Penn State. Whatever their future holds, their tape is their tape at this point. And so, if we're looking at kind of like the season end Spotify wrap of Penn State football, throw that on the list of things that we expected of this team, where the talent, and I think A.J. Harris is physically talented enough to be a top 40 NFL draft pick. Like, he runs in the 4.4s. He's 6'1". He's physical. The technique's got to get better if he's going to be that kind of guy, or else he's just going to be kind of like an off-zone corner and a guy that you put in man coverage sometimes. Davian Collins, his dad got mad at me because they said he ran a 4.23 or ran a 4.3 when he ran a 4.23 or something like that. Again, ran in the 4.2s. Sorry, I don't remember exactly because they don't publish the numbers for me to review and remind myself. He's struggled at the catch point. He struggled at the catch point previously. He's a feisty, undersized corner who likes to play aggressive and tackle, and I love his personality in the run game. But when the ball goes up in the air and it's a battle for a rebound, he's lost more than he's won. And I need to look at those, see if I can find those stats for his career. But I know they're not great. And so that's the reality of this group, that they weren't able to come through on. I think that the promise, and the point I was trying to make, is that he's got NFL skills. Runs 4.2, great. I think a good size for a corner, can play outside. Scheme, not scheme specific, because he's got those traits. Plays the run, think he can play zone, think he can play man. But it's something that's something he's got to improve upon for the next chapter of his career. And I say these things because we don't know what they are, right? We're in this situation where Penn State is going to lose players. Tony Rojas doesn't have anything in his Twitter profile. Like, some of these things are being telegraphed. Some of them we're going to find out. Like, Anthony Donko has been very loud about Terry Smith being the next head coach. If Terry Smith isn't the next head coach, is he going to stay? Is he going to go to? He's a Virginia native. And for everyone listening on the podcast, I shrugged. I raised my eyebrows and shrugged of like, we'll see. By the way, if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for being here. And I know that like you don't get talked about a whole lot, but backbone of what we do here is the YouTube channel from the immediacy of it. But you guys are unbelievably vital to the long-term health of the Blue White Illustrated live show and what we do here. So please, if you could, take a minute in the holiday season as a kindness to me and give us a 5-star review and leave a comment, especially on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, where we have most of our traffic come from. Get us boosted in the algorithms. Anytime you interact with the algorithms, they go, okay, I don't know if it's good or bad, but like if you leave us a 5-star review, it's super helpful. And I know that we talk a lot about subscribing here on the YouTube channel because that's right in my face. That's what we're hoping for, is to get this bigger. By the way, I get distracted when I read something and I read, you need to get better, T. Frank, train hard. And I don't know what that means. Like, I go to the gym 3 times a week. Like, I have I train pretty hard. So, I feel like I'm doing a good job here. Like, sometimes I log off and I'm like, I don't know if that was a good show. Like, I think this is a good show. Like, I think I've nailed it today. But apparently, letters and numbers and ampersands didn't think I did a good job today, which I don't know why I'm talking about that, but it just caught my eye. And if I'm going to stumble, I'll at least tell you why. And the reason I'm reading here is because I wanted to get your thoughts here in the chat, final 8 minutes of the show. Terry Smith is coming up next. Need to remind you of that. So we've got instant analysis as well. I know Nate is there, and I know Greg is there. So you have instant analysis from Nate and Greg. I think Fitz is there as well. So you have the full crew for instant analysis. Give their thoughts of a wild ride where Penn State put up 300 yards rushing in a 40-36 win. And that's what's coming up after the show. So make sure you check out all that stuff. Oh, okay. I appreciate you guys. I'm dropping in the middle of, here's how this works. And I apologize for talking about the thing behind the thing, but as I said here at the start of the show, it's the post-game show, and you're my co-host. But the problem is I'm having a conversation here, talking to you, talking to the podcast audience, and there's a separate conversation going on the live show. So when I'm trying to pull comments from something, I'm absolutely going to take it out of context. And it's something that happens, which is like, questions are great, and people who donate to the channel with a super chat, that's why those things are important. So you can get things like this. This is from Brian. Total roster turnover incoming. Players good enough to play at the Power 2 and SEC Big Ten. I like how you phrase that. Will transfer for money. Players that aren't good enough will be processed out. This is the thing that I want to... I think that there's an equilibrium. And maybe I'm just naive. But there is a reality of it. At a certain point, Penn State is still a Power 4 program in the Power 2. So if you're just going to leave for money, there is absolutely a grass is greener situation where that's a bad decision for your long-term career. And I know that we don't care because, we live in the moment, and these are young people, and they're being influenced by things that are out of their control. Like, they don't know what the situation is going to be at Penn State. But at a certain point, it is preferable to stay at Penn State where there will be job opportunities. And I'm not trying to make a stump speech for people to stay. Like, to be clear, I'm not trying to do that. But just logically, if every good player leaves, then they're automatically removing themselves from the starting position at a school that is losing bodies left and right. And yeah, like, you're absolutely right. Like, guys, again, I highlighted Anthony Donko, on the during the game today because he's healthy now and he absolutely train wrecked a defensive tackle on a double team, like a pure college football pancake. You know who's going to want him? Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Just off the top of my head, I know he fits to those schools and has relationships at some of them. So yeah, it makes sense for somebody like that. But let's say like Chaz Coleman is another guy that I think ties to a lot of schools, talented football player. Everyone thinks he's just the number one guy that's gone, right? Xavier Gilliam, another guy that I think is super talented. Darius Dixon. At a certain point for some of these guys, and maybe like at a defensive tackle position, like for Xavier Gilliam, he's going to be the starter here, and I don't care what scheme he's in unless it's truly like an odd front. He's going to be successful because he's good at football. So you know the school, you know where your apartment is, you know the lifestyle that you've developed at this particular place. So what you're resetting is the football, which is a big thing. I don't want to overstate that. But there is a logic here where staying is also preferable. Now, it might be for some young guys. It might be for some players that don't have as good of an option as, like I mentioned, an Anthony Donko or Ethan Grugmeyer is a great example. Like, he's done some good things here, but if he transfers to another program, is he the starter immediately? And that's a roulette situation for him. Is the new coach going to bring a quarterback with him? And then you're in a really interesting situation. So, these are case by case as always, but I do think that there's a little bit more gray area where it might not be as terrible as people expect. And that's really like where I try to live my life, which is like, yeah, here are the storm clouds, but if you want to navigate a path through to the other side where the tornado did not take you to Oz, that might be one of the logical ways it works out. But make no mistake, James Franklin is going to take all the players he can that make sense from Penn State. And that's the number one immediate threat. And then everyone else poaching the roster is absolutely certainly part of that. We're talking about Drew Aller here. He needs to get to the NFL ASAP. His college shape is costing him money by the day. Combine better be off the charts. So, Joel, if there was a conversation about Drew Aller getting drafted and I was not a part of it, I apologize for just kind of airdropping into the conversation. But I do think, like, could he apply for a medical red shirt if he wanted to, and would he want to do that? I don't think so. I think he should go to the draft. I think in retrospect he should have gone to the draft last year. There's no such thing as a second-round quarterback. And I know that there are second-round quarterbacks, and with my luck, Drew is going to get drafted in the second round. But if you're good enough to be a second-round quarterback, your tape, your talent says, I think he's worth the 33rd overall pick. Then you go in the first round. End of story. 37th overall pick. The reason guys go in the second or third round is because there's something about their tape that doesn't scream first-round draft pick. Will Levis, physically talented, his tape was bipolar, chaotic. His deep ball. You see it in the NFL. It got benched because he would take so many risks with the football. He would YOLO chuck it deep so often that it ended up costing him his job in the NFL. But it got him to be the 33rd overall pick. But was he really the 33rd overall pick? Or was he a third round or fourth round quarterback that you would take a flyer on, but you overdrafted him because of the tools? Malik Willis, another example of that, right? And so, like, Drew Brees, was a second-round quarterback. He was a first-round quarterback from a talent perspective, from a mental capabilities perspective, processing abilities perspective, but the arm strength, the size made him a second-round quarterback. Russell Wilson was a third-round quarterback. He had all the things you needed other than he was 5'10". And so the NFL wasn't going to draft him in the first round. They didn't want to draft him in the second round, and they made a mistake, right? So to me, this is the logic of Drew Aller is going to be like a third-round draft pick because you don't think his tape is good enough. End of story. And then you don't think he's a starter, but you'll take a flyer on him maybe being a starter, right? So then the wild card is like, does anyone believe in Drew that the tape, his college tape is costing him money, says Joel Nye. This year, yeah, absolutely. But also, again, I'll make the argument, I should team up with Matt. I feel like I'm a defense lawyer half the time on this show anyway. The offense he operated was suboptimal for his talents and did not give him clear pictures to throw the ball and didn't make anything easy on him. There were no easy throws. And I know he misses the short throws into the screens and the flares and the flat routes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like what Ethan Grunkmeyer had, where it's just like, oh, that's an open receiver. Oh, that was so wide open, man. Oh, wow, look at that. He had like none of those because the offense was different. They built an offense in a very different way under Terry Smith. So if Drew Aller's operating this offense and he's going 17-21, and I'd say he probably would go of a higher percentage than that in this offense, they'd let him throw the ball a little more if he didn't get hurt and was in this offense. Maybe he resurrects this. And he's a first-round draft pick by the play in the second half. All those things. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think coming back is going to help him. I think he should go to the NFL because old quarterbacks, by the way, are not in vogue. Drafting an old guy, if he were to have a fifth-year breakout, that is not something that NFL teams really love when that happens. Now, sometimes, you get the Michael Penix that you draft and you can see in the Bo Nixes. But they had breakout seasons much earlier in their career. They backed it up with a lot of tape after that. So, yeah. And again, I'm just going to say this, and it's not going to matter because people are going to not listen to this, but Dave says Grunk has gotten the job done when Aller couldn't. And again, defense attorney here pleading in front of the jury, it's already decided. But Drew Aller operated a different offense. He was the focal point of the offense, and yes, he couldn't get it done. Ethan Grunkmeyer operated the offense when Katron Allen was the focal point of the offense. So could Drew Aller have operated the offense that Ethan Grunkmeyer is operating? Absolutely. Yes, he could have. Could Ethan Grunkmeyer have operated the offense that Drew Aller did? No, but that was a non-functioning offense. So, context matters, but we live in a results-oriented world, and football is the most results-oriented thing in the world. We look at the result, and we judge that as the absolute fact and don't take the process into consideration. But you know who does take the process into consideration? Football coaches. They're obsessed with process. What that means is it's not the outcome, it's how you delivered it. Because if you get lucky, it doesn't matter. Like in the end final product, but you can't count on luck as a skill. And so now I'm just talking football philosophy here. I'm not even talking about Drew Aller and Ethan Grunkmeyer. I'm just talking about like the next coach at Penn State is going to talk about a 1-0 mentality. They're going to talk about 1% better every day. They're going to talk about all the same things James Franklin did. They're just going to use different words. It's all the process of greatness. The thing is, it's simple to be great. The process is simple. The execution is gruelingly difficult and hard. It is absolutely only for the mentally and physically strong to be able to reach the heights of a thing like football or the heights of anything in a career. Like there is luck involved, but the reason they talk about effort and discipline and all these other things is because if you're at a place like Penn State, for the most part, your physical measurements check out. You have been pre-selected for talent. And so what you do with it, the process of getting better, understanding your game film, understanding your assignment, getting sleep, being the best version of yourself on game day, all these things, it's not going to change. What's going to change is the decisions that lead to the acquisition of talent and then how you put in that position into talent to succeed in games. And I know for Penn State fans, that last one is the James Franklin stab in the heart. That is the end of the conversation of why he was a bad coach. But he was very good at a lot of those things for structure and for program formation. And the next guy is going to have similar thoughts, and he's going to say similar things in a different way. And if it doesn't happen by the end of this weekend, I don't know that it's a failure by Pat Kraft. He does, by the way, have an opportunity to fail here. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm saying that it's not this weekend that determines it. So that'll do it for today's show. Hope you had a good time this season. I've really enjoyed being here with you on the BWI Live Postgame Show. We're not going anywhere, by the way. Monday, we're going to have our 3 things that we learned about Penn State football. We're going to discuss the film of this game, and I'm not going to have to do it all in one day. I actually think that's going to be great. And then, of course, we're going to have the BWI Live Show Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from now until the sun explodes, barring holidays. So stick with us. There's a lot of football to talk about. There's a lot of process to talk about. And yes, the Penn State football is going to go through a lot of process to find out on the other side who it's going to be and what the future of Penn State is going to be, shaped by a different person. And it's good. It might be Terry Smith. It might not. I'm excited to find out about it, and I hope you join us on the ride. So listen on the podcast. I'm going to start with you. Subscribe, rate, review, 5 stars, unsubscribe, resubscribe. Help us out there. And, of course, if you're watching here on the YouTube channel, like this video on your way out. There's 250 of you here. Please like the video. It helps the algorithm. Spread it to all the world like a virus. We want to be a virus, but a good one. All right. I've run myself off the runway. I'll talk to you later.